Good morning, everybody. Last night's chat with Mrs. Piper regarding Speedway was quite an epic, thoroughly enjoyable. It was nearly 2 hours, but it was great to have Marty and Berg Bullets star rider Greg Bartosz Blair join me for that chat. Managed to get in a couple of mentions of Making a Murderer along the way, which is what it's all about, that kind of cross-pollination. Next week, one of the riders that's joining us is it actually contacted me about Making a Murderer, and then pointed out to me, not that I didn't know it already, that he was a Berg legend as well. So there is, it's interesting how you get this sort of cross-pollination. Let's start off at the beginning. Item number 1 to share with you. Just after the Supreme Court declined to look at Brendan's case, despite the 6 amicus briefs, I wrote to Steve to offer my if you like, condolences that the case wasn't going any further forward. And I think I've shared this with you before, but this is what Steve wrote to me, that I started off by saying, how many years Brendan has been locked up. And at that time, it had been 10 years, because obviously that was 2017. 10 years seems like a long time, and for Brendan it is. But many of the wrongful conviction cases we have been involved in have taken decades to unravel. And this is the main point here. I also know that dissents sometimes turn into majority opinions. People in power change, new advocates with new ideas emerge to bring new energy to the struggle. You'll know, of course, that in Brendan's case, when they had the first 7th Circuit Court hearing, and subsequently the second one, the lawyer representing the state of Wisconsin was Luke Berg. Let's pop up something I've come across to do with Luke Berg. Let's just do a little bit of this and share screen. As it says here. So this is going back a wee while. Let's go on down. This is by Ron Blitzer, 27th of September 2017, when federal judges torch Wisconsin prosecutor during Brendan Dassey argument. So this refers to the first time they went to the 7th Circuit. And one thing I will say, and I've said this all along, much as our dislike of Ken Kratz, Tom Fallon, Norm Garn, Wiegert and Fassbender, Byrne and Ernie, and this fellow Luke Berg, they're only doing their job. They're only doing, what they do. And if it wasn't them, it would be somebody else, doing what they're doing, taking their place. Unfortunately, the system has been so skewed in favor of conviction that, as we see, there could be as many as 10% of the prison population wrongfully convicted, 10% of 2 million. Okay? It's staggering, isn't it? 200,000, even if you take it as a, as a sort of 5%, 100,000 people. Wow. It's it is just, as I say, it is just staggering how many people are locked up in Wisconsin. Well, it's so not just Wisconsin prisons. Yeah, Wisconsin. We know of 2 already. Anyway, let's just crack on. I was just trying to do the maths then. Yeah, 10% of 2 million. I think that comes out at 200,000, so 5%, 100,000 people. You know, wow, that is a lot. Luke Berg appeared to be doomed from the start. He was there to argue the state of Wisconsin's case against Brendan Dassey, whose conviction for the murder of Teresa Halbach had been overturned by a lower court. Before Berg's argument in front of the Seventh Circuit even began, it was announced that due to a power outage, the podium lights in the courtroom were out and could not be fixed in time. Being mired in darkness seemed to be the theme of the day for Berg, who was hounded by the judge's questions and accusations without so much as a flicker of an answer that satisfied them. Right off the bat, Berg began by trying to play on emotions, by talking about how what Dassey did was horrific. The judges weren't having it. What happened to Teresa was certainly horrific, one judge chimed in, pointing out this wasn't the issue they were there to discuss. What was at issue was whether Dassey's confession was proper and whether he had effective assistance of counsel. Berg tried to move on to that first issue, Dassey's confession. Quote, investigators just nudged the confession out of Mr. Dassey, he began. But before he could finish his sentence, he was met with incredulity. I like that word. It's one that Luke Berg uses a term he himself uses, strains incredulity. The dude absolutely loved that term. By the way, who are we talking about? The three judges, Hamilton, who dissents, Williams and Rovner are the two lady judges that at least they've got some decency about them, unlike Hamilton. So this is, as I say, Rovner or Williams nudged, really? That led to a back and forth over Dassey's intellectual capacity, while Berg tried to argue that his mental capability was not below the legal standard. The court noted that such a standard is for adults, while Dassey, who had a low IQ and was only 16 years at the time, juveniles are not adults. Juveniles need a different test. Mr. Berg. So the state wasn't having any luck when it came to Dassey's intelligence. Maybe Berg would fare better as far as the nature of the interrogation and confession? Nope. It's like a 20 questions game, one judge said to describe the interrogation, saying the officer was making guess after guess, trying to get Dassey to go along with one of them in order to end the discussion so he could leave. The investigators made my skin crawl. By the end of his opening argument, even Berg admitted that investigators used minor deception, but maintained that it was within what is permitted for law enforcement officials. A lower court overturned Brendan Dassey's conviction earlier this year, determining that Brendan's confession was made under duress during a police interrogation. A three-judge panel from the Seventh Circuit upheld that decision, leading prosecutors to request an en banc review from the entire roster of judges. Right, okay, so sorry, I apologize. This is the en banc hearing. The entire circuit court has not made a decision yet in the case. They are expected to issue a written order. Dassey is currently still incarcerated. And I think that's probably the end of that. Yeah, apologies, 2017. Yes, of course, that must be the en banc hearing that Berg argued for the state of Wisconsin. And it's easy, isn't it, to think of Luke Berg as this terrible individual who has, gone in front of the Seventh Circuit. We're told by Steve Drizzen this is where the best lawyers practice. There's an air of decency and high class about the place, and he's going in and trying to defend the state of Wisconsin, and remembering about the Steve Drizzen opinion, how dissents change. Well, is Luke Berg on the change? Is he starting to change his colors? Let's have a look. First of all, he is not a state prosecutor anymore. And I think I've got to thank a good friend of this channel, Crockett Thompson, for pointing out this particular situation with regard to Luke Berg. It's, as I say, it's great how, you know, a little bit like Mark Godsey all those years ago, he was tasked with being a law professor at a law school, and was told he had to take on the Innocence Project. He was a top prosecutor, didn't believe that anybody that was, you know, accused of a crime and found guilty could possibly be innocent, and had his eyes totally turned by what his students were pointing out and discussing with him, and what he himself discovered. So as I say, maybe there's a glimmer of hope that Luke Berg is starting to come over to the light side. So Luke Berg now works for the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. That's what WILL. Will to Kiel. I think Kiel is a district or a county. Kiel schools drop Title IX complaint, investigation of 8th graders for using incorrect pronouns. Some of you will remember that at one time, the dude was very, very interested in looking at, what was his name? Jordan Peterson, who was discussing this idea of incorrect pronouns, that some people prefer not to be he or she, but they prefer to be called they or them, which, you know, I suppose to me, I would never dream of calling a lady they or them. It would be her, you know, but and probably vice versa. But there are people that prefer this they or them. And anyway, Luke Berg is involved in this article. There he is, Luke Berg, Deputy Counsel for Wisconsin Institute of Liberty and Law. School district is charging students with sexual harassment for mispronouncing the news. Attorneys with the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty issued a letter to administrators at the Kiel area school district, urging the district to drop a complaint and investigation against 3 8th grade boys who are being accused of sexual harassment for using incorrect pronouns when referencing a classmate. His letter explains that the mere use of biologically correct pronouns not only does not constitute sexual harassment under Title IX or the district's own policy, it is speech protected by the First Amendment. The quote, Deputy Counsel Luke Berg said, school administrators can't force minor students to comply with their preferred mode of speaking, and they certainly shouldn't be slapping 8th graders with investigations for what amounts to protected speech. This is a terrible precedent to set with enormous ramifications. Background. 3 8th grade students in the Kiel area school district were notified of a complaint and investigation for sexual harassment for using a biologically correct pronoun when referring to a classmate, instead of the student's preferred pronoun of they, them. The district's position appears to be that once a student informs others of alternative preferred pronouns, any subsequent mispronouncing automatically constitutes punishable sexual harassment under Title IX. Oh, dear. Seems a bit far-fetched, this, doesn't it? I don't know. Sexual harassment, as defined in both Title IX and the Kiel area school district's policy, typically covers things like rape, sexual assault, dating violence, stalking, inappropriate touching, and quid pro quo sexual favors. I think that sums up Ken Kratz beautifully, doesn't it? That is everything: rape, sexual assault, dating violence, stalking, inappropriate touching, and sexual favors. That is definitely Ken Kratz there. It's useful that they were able to model this definition on Ken Kratz's behavior. None of that, or anything even close to it, is alleged in the complaint, however. While there is a catch-all for unwelcome conduct that is so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it effectively denies a person equal access to education, the mere use of a biologically correct pronoun without significantly more does not count. And if it did, it would violate the First Amendment. First Amendment. Schools, of course, can and should deal with teasing and bullying, but using so-called incorrect pronouns alone is not punishable without more. Further, the district has failed to follow procedures and its own process. Both the district's policy and regulations require notice of the allegations before beginning any investigation, so that the accused has sufficient time to prepare a response before any initial interview. The district failed to provide a detailed notice of the allegations, instead providing only a generic letter. One day before the district sought to question the minor students, stating that the boys were accused of using incorrect pronouns. The district initiated its investigation and conducted interviews without first providing additional details or giving the boys and their families time to prepare. What the district calls mispronouncing does not amount to sexual harassment under Title IX as a matter of law, and the district's conduct infringes on the First Amendment and due process rights of the students. Now that Luke Berg no longer works for the state of Wisconsin as a prosecutor, I'm going to try and write him a nice email asking him how he feels about that particular case. Is he proud of having won at the Seventh Circuit armback hearing, or is there a certain amount of him that realizes that, you know, he was just doing his job as best he could? You know, he's got to earn a living, and sometimes, you know, you get defense lawyers that have to defend people who are guilty and then don't like it. But it's just part of law, and I would suggest that's probably the case in Luke Berg's case. Clearly, his his allegiances have changed from prosecution to defence, and to actually be concerned about something as I don't want to offend anybody, but seriously, that case that we've just looked at, that is so trivial, that is ridiculous. Yes, have the teachers use these preferred pronouns, but the kids themselves, and if there is any form of harassment there, does it really need to go this far? That seems like somebody's trying to make a precedent, make a show of it. Anyway, as usual, let me know what you think. You're always good at that. Bye for now.